I was doing silly things like going out drinking and stuff like that. And there was one moment in my career where I didn't really want to play anymore. And I'll never forget it. And then, we got relegated and then Tottenham come calling, and I didn't have to think twice, to be honest with you.
So was it time to talk about Newcastle, do you think?
There was loads of comments when I first signed there, as you could imagine, different, he came here for money or whatever it may be. But what people don't actually realise is I came here on less money than when I was at Madrid.
When did you realise the power of the fans here and get that real sense of what they do for this club? Hey everyone, it's Jake here with just a big thank you to all of our new subscribers here on YouTube. And we've had some amazing comments as well. We had a really nice quote from Reese, who left a comment under the Ryan Mason upload recently. Ryan is the coach at Spurs Football Club. Brilliant episode. He said, "You never truly know what people have been through in their lives. What an amazing guy." And Dell says, "An inspirational, soulful, humble human." And that's the point of high performance. We are giving you the truth behind the headlines so you can really get to know people. Hit subscribe, please, right now, because the more subscribers, the bigger the channel, the bigger the names. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So what do you believe high performance to be, Kieran?
Yeah, I think it's, challenges throughout your life on and off the pitch. I've certainly had them in my career. Yeah, it's just about giving everything, never giving up. Going back to when I was at City, for example, and never making it there, and it's about how you react and how you bounce back from setbacks. And I've took the long route, but I'm happy. I wouldn't change anything.
Well, should we start there then?
Yeah.
So you're at Manchester City. You've got dreams of making the first team like everybody else. When and how did you realise that wasn't going to be your path?
I was lucky enough to have a great youth setup and train with the first team, and I didn't realise how tough it would be playing at the top, where you'd see the top players, Bellamy and the careers that he's had and the players there. But yeah, I think it was difficult because he had Zabaleta and Micah Richards at the time. So I knew it was always going to be difficult. And I think it's when I went Barnsley at first on loan, and as soon as I got the taste of playing week in, week out in the Championship, and that's what I sort of wanted, and then the new manager came in, Mancini at the time, from Mark Hughes, and from then on they started buying every player, and I knew then it was going to be very difficult for me. So
how was it dealt with? Like, when is the moment that you realise you're going?
I think it's more pre-season. I think I went on tour. I went on tour in America with Man City at the time, and we went to 2 different states, and then next minute, the manager basically, Mancini at the time, said, "Oh, we don't need." There was me and there was 2 other players, so then we had to fly back. And I just felt then, as a young boy, traveling with the first team, I was sad. I was devastated because then I had to fly back with the other 2 lads at the time who was my age, and I sort of knew then, like, really, it was tough.
Why did he send you back to tell you? Or?
No. I think it was just maybe they had too many players. I think. I don't know if players were coming late back from international or whatever it was, but as a young lad, you always dream of, trying to travel with the first team, especially pre-season. That's when young lads get their opportunities. And then, I can just remember flying home from New York one time, and I just knew then really, like, I'm never going to make it.
How old were you?
I was only about, I think, 17, 18 at the time.
So tell us about, on that flight back then, Kieran, that you're close enough to be able to see it and touch it and be part of what you said you've just dreamt about. How do you not let all those negative thoughts crowd your head and convince you that maybe you're not good enough or you're not ever going to reach it? What did you do to counter that?
Yeah, it was tough. But I love football. I had my older brother who played in the Football League, so I used to always bounce ideas off him. He was really good for me growing up. And yeah, just look, going back to when I had to come back from pre-season tour, it was more, disappointed, really sad. Seeing the team go one way and I had to go the other way, from on the airstrip, it was weird, really. But yeah, it's like, again, you have setbacks, and I was so young then, and it was just about, trying to get out and play and have that smile on my face.
But we've recently seen in the media, like Trent Alexander-Arnold is doing a lot of work in this space for kids that have been let go from the academy scheme and often feel their life's at an end, and the statistics of making it as a footballer, I think Michael Calvin speaks about it's 0.019%. So how did you put yourself in that category of being able to be in that tiny percentage of people that do process that and still manage to forge a career?
Yeah, what Trent's doing is unbelievable, to be fair. It's unbelievable because I play with a lot of players who didn't get a contract and they're not playing when I look back and think they could have had a really good career. So what Trent's doing is unbelievable. But yeah, like going back to your point, it's having that belief really, and having my older brother there who played in the Football League, and again, he's had difficult moments when he played. And I always believed in myself from when I worked in the academy with Jim Cassell, Steve Ayres and people like that. I had good guidance. And yeah, it's just all about getting on the bike again and going again, really.
And as we sit here today, you're captaining Newcastle on the verge of playing in the Champions League next season. If I'd have given you the choice, you go into that meeting with Mancini all those years ago at Manchester City, and he either can still say, right, you're going to stay with us and let's see what happens, and you take your chances, or you choose the same path and you take the setback and deal with it. What would you go for?
Yeah, it's an easy one, really. Close. I would love to say I would have stayed there, but again, I have no regrets in my career. Everyone has different journeys, and I'm absolutely delighted with how my career's gone. But I think at the time, I was only young, and I was never going to get ahead of Prime Zabaleta or Micah Richards at the time. So for me, it was just all about getting out. And so I think I would have, looking at it now, still chose the same route that I'd taken.
Mm. So you then go to Barnsley.
Yeah.
Right. Give us an idea of what the next challenge in your life is, which is forget about the trappings of the beautiful lifestyle at Manchester City. You're now going to go play at Barnsley. Like, what did that teach you that you just couldn't learn when you were at City?
I think it was a tricky period, that, because I was young. I moved away from home. Playing with Darren Moore, made my debut next to him, Middlesbrough away. So yeah, there was a lot of challenges, really. Like I said, professionalism at the time when I was so young, that wasn't great, if I'm going to be honest with you.
In what way? What do you mean by that?
I was a young lad. I was living in a hotel with two other lads, maybe going out too much when I was young. Going from, a YTS on £95 a week to a little bit more, say like 300, thinking you're the big man, you know what I mean? But yeah, like I said, you learn off that.
How though? Because there's so many kids that don't learn off it. So what was it that you learned?
I think the people you have around you, that's the big thing. I think looking back, I think I'm not saying I had bad people around me at the time. It was just I was so young, I was naive, and I went out a lot. And then as I've got older, as I've played more games, certain managers as well who just remind you, the career that you can have when I was so young, and, don't take the wrong path.
Can you remember one bit of advice from that period where you maybe sat down with someone and they laid it on the line and it had an impact on you?
I think there was one time where my mum came, because again, I was young, I was on more money, and I was doing silly things like going out drinking and stuff like that. And there was one moment in my career where I didn't really want to play anymore. And I'll never forget it. I was living in Barnsley on my own in an apartment, and mum drove up, and yeah, she just sat me down and just made me realise what they've sacrificed, and, every day, Monday to Saturday, me and my brother, because we didn't really grow up as a wealthy family, my mum and dad have worked so hard to get us in the position we're in today. So I think that was the one moment in my career where I really realised, how much it meant to my mum, and that was definitely a turning point for me.
And why didn't you want to play anymore?
I don't know. It was just more like being alone at 18 in Barnsley. I know it's not far away from Bury, but when you're so young, and at the time I didn't really have that. As you do now, where teams have people who support you and stuff like that and help you manage certain situations. So I think that moment when my mum came really, really helped me.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because all we see in the world of football is the big games under the bright lights and the nice cars and the nights out and the great salaries. But, you're 18 years old at this point, and you've already kind of had to hold your own in the Manchester City Academy, failed there, been sent back on a flight on your own from the States. I mean, that's a lot for a 17-year-old to process. Then join a a football club at a completely different level and then be on your own and then not treat yourself properly and then want to maybe quit the game, and your mum's had to come and remind you of actually how far you've come. This is all before the age of 18. And this is, I think, the side of football that is never really spoken about, is it?
No, definitely not. And again, I go back to when I was in the youth team and I've seen so much quality in my youth setup, and I think there's only about 4 of us who made a career out of that team, and it's scary, really. And I think looking back, I don't think the support system was really there in place for players. That's my thought anyway, from what I went through when I was younger. So I think that now it's totally different. I think, you know, players now have a lot of support. So yeah, I think it was tough, but again, I've had a lot of challenges throughout my career.
And we have a lot of young footballers and young athletes that listen to this. If someone is listening to this now and they're in that place that you were in at 18 thinking, this isn't for me, what would you say to them?
Yeah, certainly. I think at the time when I was young, I didn't really have the people around me to speak to, who had the confidence to speak to. I had a good manager in Mark Robbins, don't get me wrong, but I didn't feel confident enough to really speak to him or any of my family. So I think the most important thing is looking back in the situation that I was in, and the young players today is just to, you know, open up to speak to somebody. Because when I spoke to my mum at that moment of time, it was like a big weight off my shoulders, and then I felt like I was free again. So yeah, definitely, you know, speak up.
And did you ever have a plan B for what you would do if football didn't materialise?
Not really, because I weren't really the cleverest in school, if I'm going to be honest with you. No, I think it was just my main priority was football. That's what I believed. That was what was drilled into me from day one from my dad, and then seeing my brother play. So that's all I wanted to ever do, is play football. I always believed that I could make it. But again, it's about having that dedication and that professionalism to try and get in the position that I'm in today.
So when would you say that you did become a professional, not in terms of being paid to play football, but when your whole lifestyle was dedicated to making the most out of your attributes?
I think when when Eddie Howe was manager at Burnley, when he took me there, to be honest, because I went back to Man City, and then they gave me a new contract when I was there, after my loan at Barnsley, and then Eddie Howe took me on loan, and then that was only around the corner from me. So, and he was a top manager at the time, and that's when I first realised where, one, I needed to get out of City because I was playing week in, week out, you know, playing against men, and I loved it. So, and then luckily I signed in January on a permanent basis to Burnley. So I think when Eddie Howe took me, that's the first time I realised, really.
And what would you say if somebody was watching you from Barnsley to Burnley? What would they have noticed was the big difference
in myself,
in terms of how you were preparing, how you were approaching games?
I think there was a definite change. I think the moment when I was with my mum, that's when it really clicked. That's when the penny dropped for me, really. So I think I think there was a massive difference in the way I approached games and stuff, even though I was still so young. And the players that I had around me as well. I had a good experienced pros. Michael Duff, who was manager of Barnsley, he was a big key factor in my career.
And what about the growth of your own self-confidence? Like, you know, you're now captaining Newcastle United on the pitch, right? So you have to be a great communicator. We'll talk about this later. A cultural architect, you know, driving the direction, the dressing room that Eddie Howe wants to go. You've just said you didn't really have the confidence even to speak to Mark Robbins or your parents about your struggles. How did you manage to grow that confidence? I think it was the more games you play, the more confidence you get, settled. Because I knew I was at Burnley on a permanent basis. I knew I had a home there. I was settled, and I think it's having people again like Michael Duff around you. You know, who else was there at the time? David Edgar at the time, and the experienced players who had been there a long time. And yeah, I think I got it then, really, when I was more vocal, more confident, and that comes from playing games week in, week out. So just remind me, Eddie Howe bought you at Burnley, and then Sean Dyche came in. Yeah. Why do you smile when I mention that name? No, he's just a great guy, isn't he? Well, he loves you. Yeah, good guy. And I guess the feeling's mutual. It is. However, he did describe you on our podcast as a butterball when he first arrived at the club. So I think even though you feel you were more professional at this point, I wasn't. I was better than what I was. Right, okay. So Sean Dyche comes in. Yeah. very high standards. Fitness is vital for him. How did he go about turning you into the player that he wanted you to be?
Again, it was more lifestyle. I think what I was eating, what I was drinking, stuff like that. There was a story, I don't know if he told you, about when I was in a local restaurant and he just came in as manager, and then I seen him walk through the doors and I was just like, oh, no way, the manager's here. And then he comes over.
Is this in Burnley?
It's like a Rotten Stall, it's about 10 minutes away. And then he came over and luckily I was drinking a Coke. And then he come over and smelt my drink and then just smiled and then walked off and said, I'll see you tomorrow. So yeah, I was lucky really in that moment.
Eyes everywhere all the time.
There is.
So we've heard from him about how he creates culture at a football club. When we talk about Sean Dyche, the manager, what is the one story from that period where he first arrived at Burnley that made you realise, oh wow, okay, this is going to be interesting?
It was his first meeting because he had like a projector with all these rules. And then obviously it was like, you have to train with shin pads on. So straight away we knew, right, we're in for it here. And just all his principles and his rules. And, you know, he's a big believer in like, leave your egos at the gate and stuff like this. And, you know, the togetherness, the way he wants his teams to set up, you have to run or you don't play for him. And that's when we realised really like, you know, it's going to be tough this. But he was brilliant for everybody. The way he, there was no bitterness. There was no, if nobody was playing, they weren't, you know, down tooling or anything like that. He proper sorted everyone out, and that's what we needed in that time.
And your relationship with him was quite special. When did you first realise that the two of you had like a nice affinity? What did he say to us? I don't offer special rules to anyone apart from drips. That was his. That was his line. Yeah, mate. He sees you as a son.
No, the gaffer was brilliant. I think me personally, he helped me out massively with. He believed in me a lot, as all my other coaches did. But he's really the one where he believed in me, where I could take my game to the next level, and he really sorted me out on and off the pitch. He really took care of me.
Can you give us a specific of when you and him had a chat and you left thinking, okay, now I know what he wants from me?
Yeah, I can't remember one specific moment really, but there was times where I would go out, you know, on a Tuesday or something, and we would have Wednesday off, and he would know on the Thursday morning, and he used to drag me in on a regular basis. But yeah, he was tough with me, but in a good way. And you know, looking back, that played a big part of my career.
So you made a comment there about when you realised that you could take your career to another level. I'm interested in how you reset your own expectations for what your career could offer, because you've gone from being sent home from City, where you'd have just taken a career in football, I imagine, at that stage. You've gone to Barnsley. You're then playing well in the Championship. When did you think, actually, I can go to the Premier League, I can go to international level?
I think it was probably the year we got promoted by Burnley. I think we had a really good season that year. I was creating a lot of assists in that league, and I really believed that I could play in the Premier League. And it was just having, you know, the way he managed me, you know, the way he kept on telling me, you know, you can take your game all the way to the top. You could play for England one day. And back then I was thinking, that's a big jump, you know. Yeah. But he really believed in me and gave me that confidence. And as soon as we got promoted, I was thinking, right, you know, this is my second chance to show I can play in the Premier League, obviously from leaving Man City.
So go on.
Well, I was just going to follow up on that then. So I get that it must have given you confidence to hear your manager say that, but did you ever have doubts that, like, Sean had never managed in the Premier League at that stage, he'd never played there himself, so how did you sort of perceive him telling you that? Like, were there any doubts? Was there anything that would cause you to stop and reflect?
Not really, 'cause I didn't really think of that back then. If the manager's managing the Premier League or not, it was just nice to hear my manager saying that to me, giving me that confidence, and that just shows signs of a good man manager, which he is. It weren't just me who did that too. He did it with a lot of the players there, because a lot of the players didn't play the Premier League, myself included at the time. So he gave you that real belief, and even the next season that we went into the Premier League, even though we got relegated, it was still a great experience.
How did he do it though, when you say he gave you that belief? Like, how?
He's like a magician. No, he just had the arm around you, you know, just it would recognise certain moments when you weren't yourself. That was another good thing about him. The right times when to give you the rollicking when you needed it or put an arm around you. And again, that's why I said he's a really good man manager.
And what's your relationship like then with self-doubt? I mean, it's very interesting that we spoke at the beginning of this about the setbacks, because there is this belief that the school of hard knocks is the sort of perfect grounding, really. So you've got to the Premier League having not had an easy path. So what was your relationship like with self-doubt at this point?
Yeah, it was getting better, of course, because obviously the early stage of my career, it was tough. As you said, I had a lot of setbacks then. But through playing more and more games and gaining that more experience, you believe in yourself a lot more. So I didn't really have any self-doubt. It was just more excitement. When I knew I got promoted, it was just like, I've took the long route and I'm back in the Premier League. So again, then it was just about thriving and trying to impress as soon as I made that first game against Chelsea.
So I was going to say, do you remember your first game?
Yeah. Went 1-0 up, Scott Arfield, and then I was thinking to myself, it ain't that bad, is it? The Premier League, and then next minute we're 3-1 down, I think it was. So yeah, and then we thought it was going to be a tough season.
And what was the difference between, like, for lay people like us that have never played, what would you say is the big difference between going from the Championship to being in the Premier League?
I think in the Championship, if you give certain possession away in certain areas, you can maybe get away with it. Where in the Premier League, again, when we played Chelsea the first game, we went 1-0 up. And then Chelsea just, Fabregas, the players like, Costa then just switched it on, and then next minute you're 3-1 down, and it's so clinical and the pace is so much faster than the Championship. So yeah, it's totally different. It's totally different than Champ.
And in your...
Well, I was going to ask, so how do you prepare for that transition then?
Gaffer just runs you, really. No, it's difficult, but
that's his answer to everything.
Yeah,
keep running.
Yeah, I keep running. But we had players who played in the Premier League. We had Dean Marney, Michael Duff, who experienced the Premier League, not for long periods. I think it was only for a year or two, but they had that experience. So, but I think for myself, when I know I played Premier League, it was just more excitement, really. Just looking forward to it, as everybody does when they get promoted.
So I'm interested in exploring this because I can imagine we've had this conversation with a lot of people on the podcast where they've learnt to reframe nerves and butterflies. That, like, some people might describe it as anxiety, but you're describing that same sensation as excitement, that you're looking forward to it. Yeah. How did you learn to do that?
I don't think I really learned. I think it was because, again, my history that I had, the journey that I took, and then once you get promoted from the Championship, it's an unbelievable feeling knowing that you've worked so hard that season, and then it's just, honestly, it's just excitement. When you've never played Premier League before, it's just like you can't wait to get going. So I think it's just more excitement more than anything, really.
And at that level, you do have to go through maybe 3 or 4 defeats on the bounce. What was the key to keeping the self-belief going on? What did Sean do to keep the self-belief in the squad at that time?
It was tough. I think the most important thing is the togetherness in the squad. We had a real good group there, and keep the morale high, and because it's going to be difficult. You're going to go through moments where I think the first 9 games, I don't think we had a win. And then I think was from the outside, then it started getting a bit noisy, saying we're going to have the lowest points ever in the Premier League, and I'm not gonna lie, that played a part in a little bit of it, thinking, when's our first win gonna come? I think it was about 11 games we didn't win for. I think we only had like 3 points. So that was tough mentally for everybody at the club.
We have a lot of business people that listen to this, and their big thing is creating a culture and getting the people to buy into it. What was said or done in that period? Let's say 5 games in, you've still not won something. Can you remember what was going on at that point? Because again, it's easy to go, well, they created a togetherness. Like what? How was that fostered?
I can't really remember, to be honest with you, at the time, but again, it's just, keep believing, really. I know it's easy to say that, but it were tough when we didn't win for 9 games, and then I think it was 10. But again, it's just always sticking together. That's the most important thing, because once you go through a bad moment like that and then you have a split camp, it's impossible. It's impossible.
So Sean told us that one of the ways that he did it was like that phrase you said about leave your ego at the gate, don't bring it in here. And he had like rules such as you couldn't wear headgear, or you weren't allowed to have like snoods or earphones on when you were doing interviews. And one of the things that we're often wary of for our listeners is we don't want this to be a gimmick where they go, oh, it's because they don't wear snoods is why they won. But would you tell us from a player's point of view, why did those kind of rules or why were those kind of rules so effective?
Yeah, I think with Dyche, I think it was more he wanted you to wear shin pads. He wanted you not to wear snooze because you wouldn't wear them in a game. He didn't want you to wear gloves, hats because you wouldn't wear them in a game. I think that was his thought process, to be honest with you. And yeah, we all bought into it. We bought into everything that he said. And you know, from even when I left, he had a very successful time there. But yeah, he was just big on all that. You know, like I don't even think he wanted you to wear tracksuit pants at one point because you weren't playing them. So I think that was his thought process, really. You know, you train as you play.
And I think it's easy to buy into that stuff when you're winning and you're getting promoted.
Yeah, definitely.
The challenge is getting people to come on the journey.
But we had a really good group there, to be honest. We had a really good group where we just bought into it straight away because we knew. And I think that year we got promoted as well. I think we signed like 3 players on a free, and I think we got written off to get relegated as well. So Sean Dyche deserves huge credit for what he did for that football club. Lovely.
So do you.
Oh, thank you.
But nothing lasts forever.
No.
And eventually Spurs come calling.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was, I think at the time where, when we got promoted, I only had a year left on my contract at Burnley, and I could have left on a free, but yeah, Sean Dyche ended up asking me to sign a new contract, which I did. And then, yeah, we got relegated, and then Tottenham come calling, and I didn't have to think twice, to be honest with you, because I've had the opportunity to play European football.
Is it one of those things where you can remember the very moment that you first heard of their interest, where you were, what you were doing?
Yeah, it was like, I can't remember who we played. I think it was West Ham at home. It was around about that time. I think like 3 games to the end of the season. I heard the interest, and
how did you hear it?
Well, I was speaking to Walks, funny enough, as well, when we played Tottenham at home, and he said a few things to me, and yeah, and then that's when I was hearing the interest, and then end of the season came, and then yeah, I ended up at Tottenham.
It's interesting. Rio Ferdinand says this is like Sir Alex Ferguson used this trick all the time. If he knew that a footballer was mates with someone else that he wanted to buy, he'd be like, just go and have a word. Just tell them how great this place is.
No,
and
that's
how
true.
much, how much we love
That's
them.
true.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Can you remember what he said? What was the...
No, he was just basically saying the manager's been asked about you a couple of times and stuff like this. It wasn't anything like, would you want to come to Tottenham or anything? It was just more...
Don't worry, there's no tapping up story coming out of this stuff.
No. Being honest with you, it was just more like the manager asked about you, and it was good to hear. But
what do you then do with that information? Do you get on to your agent and go, look, there might be something?
Nothing really, because my agent sort of knew about it at the time. And then obviously when I was speaking to her, I did mention that obviously Walks were just saying a few things, and then it happened really quickly, to be honest with you, really quickly.
But what questions do you ask going back the other way? So I get it's flattering that the manager's asking about you, but what questions are you asking? Is this the right environment for me?
To be honest with you, I didn't really think it was going to happen at the time, because I was at Burnley. Tottenham was a big club, and I didn't think it would happen, if I'm going to be honest with you. But yeah, at the time, I didn't really ask him any questions about the club or anything like that, because I didn't think it was possible that I'd go to Tottenham. And yeah, as I said before, like when the season ended, it happened so quick.
How quick?
Playing about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. That's when stuff was getting agreed, but I was on holiday and stuff like that at the time.
But if you were to ask questions now, like as an older player now, what are the kind of questions you'd advise anyone to ask before they go into any new environment?
I'd definitely say, what's the group like? What's the atmosphere like? Obviously the supporters, and yeah, the most important for me is the team. What's everybody like around the place? Because you don't want to walk into a dressing room and it's not together, or it's split where certain players are eating at certain tables with certain people and it's a bit cliquey. You don't want that. You want a team that's together.
So is that the killer question you'd ask then about, is there cliques, is there divisions?
I'll just say, what's the team, what's the players like, what's the atmosphere like in the dressing room, and the style of play, is the manager good, just things like that, really.
And are you the sort of person that wants assurances about playing?
Well, right now?
Back then?
Back then. No, for me, back then it was just more, Tottenham are interested. I have the opportunity to play European football. So for me, it wasn't about being first choice, because I knew I wasn't going to be if I signed for Tottenham, because obviously Walks was there.
Yeah.
But that's going to be the first time since Barnsley that you're going to have to move away from Manchester. You're going to have to be living away from home. Yeah. Was that a concern for you?
Not then, really, because my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she moved down with me. So that was a massive massive thing for me at the time when I got out of my area, because my wife's been a massive part of my life and my career. So yeah, that was a big part.
How long have you guys been together?
Since I was about 18. Yeah, it's been a long time.
So doesn't feel like that though, does it? Don't say that. It feels like 2 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, that's an interesting comment, like in terms of the importance of your wife.
Yeah.
What is it that she offers you that does allow you to go and perform? Again,
somebody to speak to if I'm feeling down, which there has been throughout my career. I speak to her about anything. Just the support, really. You know, I have someone there who's fully behind me with whatever decision I make. If I do anything good or bad on and off the pitch, she's there to support me 100%. So, and she's been a key part of my life, really.
Is she interested in football?
She loves it, yeah. She absolutely loves it, yeah. Right. Absolutely loves it.
So let's talk about going from Sean Dyche as your manager to Mauricio Pochettino as your manager.
Yeah.
First impressions?
Shock. Big shock, if I'm honest with you. Went on holiday to Cancun, come back thinking I was in good nick. Next minute, I'm in the fat club.
Is that
and then
right?
I was in the altitude chamber, yeah. There was a couple of us, and I thought I was, my weight was good, and then, no. I was straight in the chamber after every session, and that's when I knew, this is different.
And who delivered that news to you?
It was Jesus, his assistant manager.
Yeah, Jesus Perez, yeah.
Yeah, so that was probably the first week with just looking at, the longer I got there, just looking at all the other players conducting themselves, really. We had obviously Lloris, Harry Kane at the time, and Jan Vertonghen and Toby. So it was a shock, really. Yeah.
Right, so this is interesting. What is it that those players are doing that you maybe hadn't seen in your career? And that's not to say that the guys you were playing with before weren't professionals, but this is the elite level now.
Yeah, I think what time they're in. When I arrived, they were already finished the gym, for example, certainly Harry. What they was eating off the field, as I was there longer, I got really close to a few of them and what they was doing off the field. And yeah, that was a shock for me personally because of where I came from, the culture that I came from, and to the new culture at Tottenham.
And obviously you've come from Burnley, right? So, you hadn't signed from Man United or Real Madrid. You weren't coming in as a guaranteed starter necessarily. Can you give us an insight into how you carried yourself, conducted yourself, how you trained in that first training session, how you chose to speak to those other players on the first day?
Yeah, well, I was close with Walks. I knew him from the youth setup with England, so he really took care of me there. But I think it was just like, just enjoy yourself, and embrace it, try and do as well as you can. Going back, I knew I weren't going to be first choice, but it was just like conducting myself in the right way and just learning, really, because I was about 25 at the time, I think I was. But yeah, just learning off the other players with how they prepare for training and just everything on and off the field, really.
And was there one thing you saw from another player where you thought, that I'd never even thought about that I'm adopting that now, that's how I'm going to operate day to day?
I think I can only speak on Harry Kane's behalf, really, because he's probably one of the most professional players I play with, if I'm honest. And just the way he is from when he arrives through the building to going in the gym, doing extras, again, eating the right things and the recovering. And yeah, I used to watch him a lot when I was there because obviously it was Harry Kane, weren't it? So,
was he captain at the time?
No, Lloris was captain.
How would Harry deliver news to you if he didn't think you were pulling your weight or playing well enough?
Yeah.
And how would he do that?
He'd pull you to one side, maybe, not in like an aggressive way. He was just trying to help, because he wanted the best. He wanted everyone to train the best possible way, really. So he would do it in a good way. H is a good guy.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because we've only spoken to one guest on high performance who said to us there's a difference between high performance and elite performance. And it feels like you've gone from a high performing environment to an elite environment. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. Because obviously playing at Tottenham was the elite. I was in the Europa League at the time, and then obviously the Champions League. So you're playing with fully internationals. I weren't playing with internationals at Burnley. I think, when internationals used to go off, I think there was only 5 of us at Tottenham's training ground training with the young lads. So that says everything about the different mindset and the challenges that I had to overcome, really.
When we interviewed Mauricio, he spoke about the message that John McDermott had given him about in any culture, you've got that FIFO effect. You either fit in or you fuck off. And he said that was very much his mindset of what he had. So I'm interested that you've come from Burnley. How much of it is being explicit that you're being inducted into it of Kieran, you need to be in at this time, you need to be eating this food, and how much of it is just you're expected to either wise up yourself or we'll just find a way, we'll get someone to replace you?
Yeah, of course, it has to come from in yourself to be in on time. You can't be late, because Pochettino was mad on that if you was late, and he would know as well. So if you tried to walk in and thinking and you was late and you said you was on time, you have people ticking you off every time you come in, what time you arrived in.
And why was that significant?
I just think, there's no reason to be late, personally. Being on time, if you have to be in for 9:30, you have to be in for 9:30. You have to eat breakfast and then get ready to train at the right times. So you have to be in pre-activation at a certain time. Training, if you had to do extras after training, you have to be there at a certain time. So he was proper. He was strict, but in a good way.
Can we talk about energia universal, as he describes it? Universal energy, this belief he has that everyone carries an energy about them, and he can feel the energy either by having his hand on you or holding onto your hand or your shoulder or something like that. Do you remember that first time you sort of realised how him and Jesus operate?
Yeah, there was times when you shake his hand and stuff like that, and there was one moment where I just got carried away and somebody said something, I think, and then he squeezed my hand and looked me in the eyes. That's when I really shit myself, really. When I first met, I thought, right, then I knew then that moment as well, this is real. So, but no, they're great guys, to be fair, and there was a massive part in my next chapter of my career as well.
But when they're doing that and they're saying like, right, you need to shake us in your eyes, like you think of someone like Glenn Hoddle, when he was employing Eileen Drury at the time, and people made lots of fun about this faith healing and regarded it as being a little bit out there. And yet now you've got a manager talking about positive universal energy. What's your reaction to that?
I don't know, really. I think for me, it's, when he did grab my hand and went, no, look me in the eyes and squeezing my hand and stuff. Yeah, I was more like a little bit taken back, really, if I'm honest. But, people operate in different ways, and obviously the manager, Jesus, and their staff certainly operated in a different way. But if they believe in that and that works for them, then they need to bounce that off everyone else in the squad, really.
But did anyone ask him, like, what does this mean and how do we get more of it?
Not really, to be honest with you. If I'm going to be honest, no, not really. To me, I didn't really notice it much, to be honest.
Right.
He told us that he used to sit there and watch the players walk in the mornings, and he would sort of gauge just by looking at you. He would say to us, I could tell whether they've slept well, had an argument with their partner, and if I felt they weren't right, I would tell them, you're not training today. Yeah,
it's funny you say that, because it's like he knew everything about you. It's like he had cameras everywhere. He just knew if you was I don't know, you didn't sleep well, or he'll just know if you're in a bad mood. And again, he was a good man manager. He knew when to pull you in, when not to, when to speak to you, when not to speak to you. So, but yeah, it was like a magician at times.
It's interesting, that, isn't it? It's that ability to kind of relate to people. There's two very distinct jobs in a football manager's locker. They have to be able to do the tactics and do the substitutions and work out how the opposition are going to play and counter them. But then there's a whole other side to the game, I think, that we don't understand, which is this.
Yeah, and definitely, especially when that's why it's so difficult, I think, to be a manager where, like you said, the tactical on the pitch, the starting 11, but most importantly, the players who are not playing. Because that's difficult, because I went for a long time when I didn't even play. Maybe my first season I played about 4 games, I think.
How was that?
No, it was tough. Of course it was, but I knew it was going to be, because Walks was flying. I knew I weren't going to be number 1 right back. But yeah, I just had to keep my head down, because this was my first season at the elite, training with the elite facilities, and get myself in proper good shape, especially the way he played, the manager, because it was relentless. So yeah, it was all a learning curve to me, and I learned a lot that first season. We've
met so many managers that tell us about they're judging people when they're not picked rather than when they are. It's easy to be everyone's friend when things are going well. It's how you handle the moments when you've been dropped. What kind of messages or lessons did you learn that maybe you'd pass on now here at Newcastle to lads that are not making the first team squad that keep them credible?
Yeah, I just think it's through my own experiences when I've not been playing. It's you just got to keep your head, keep disciplined, because in football your chances will come. You know, football is about luck as well, where something will happen and you're in, and you've always got to be ready. And again, when you're not performing well, again, it's just about going back to the basics and again having the right support around you. That's the key.
Can we talk about the biggest game of your career so far, the Champions League final? Do you have fond memories of the fact that this guy that got released by Man City ended up at Barnsley, almost quitting the game, got to a Champions League final? Or do you not like revisiting it because you didn't win?
Oh, so, of course, I'm disappointed that we didn't win it, but I'm just really proud of the way my journey's gone, if I'm honest with you, from what you just mentioned then to a Champions League final. I never thought for 1 second I'll be playing in a Champions League final. So to reach it the way that we did reach it, it was always a special moment, but, you know, I think the first 5 minutes killed the game really in that final.
When you think back to that run to the final, what is the moment that springs to mind for you?
I think... there's so many. I think, if I'm being honest with you, I think the City game, when I think it was Raz who scored in the last second, and then he was offside. Then Llorente scored, but then obviously the Ajax when we was 3-0 down with 40 minutes to go, and Lucas scores his hat-trick. So,
but what's been said at half-time in that game, Kieran?
I think there was fireworks going off. To be honest with you. H said a few words, the manager did. And again, I don't even know, to be honest with you. It was just crazy, that last 35 minutes or something. It was just having that belief, you know, got nothing to lose now. We're 3-0 down. Yeah, if we get one, try and get another and then get another. It's easy saying that, but...
Could you remember the messages in there at halftime? Like what were they saying? Because it's all very ranting and raving, play better, but that's not helpful in those moments, is it?
No, I can remember... I don't think Harry will mind me saying this, but I've not seen Harry go mad really in his career, but he really wasn't happy because I think because he weren't playing as well because he was injured at the time, and he weren't happy, but he didn't say anything in a negative way. It was all positive, but just seeing him, me personally, just seeing him and you know how he dealt with it and the way he spoke to certain players in a good way, of course. Yeah, I think that helped me a little bit.
In what way?
Just being positive, just, you know, got nothing to lose now. Just go out there and just, try and get one goal and then, you know, try and get another. But yeah, he's a really positive minded player, H.
I think there's two interesting things there. The first one is that he's injured, right?
Yeah. So
it'd be very easy for him in that moment not to be a leader and go, well, I'm injured, so I'm just going to step back and not get involved in this because this is going to be a disaster. We're going to lose this 5-0 and it won't involve me. You know, self-preservation. Yeah. That's the first thing. He chose not to do that. The second thing is, like you said, I've very rarely seen him act like this. Choosing your moments to deliver hard truths to people is one of the key tenets to true high performance and true leadership. And it feels like, of course he won't mind you saying this, because this is a guy that got it right in the moment when it really mattered, you know?
And he's a leader, and anything that comes, you know, that he speaks or comes out of his mouth, you listen. You know, he's one of those characters where he's so an important player for club and country, and I've been lucky enough to represent that with him. So everything that he says, you just listen, and you always get a positive reaction from what he says, because Harry is, you know, sometimes quiet and stuff, you know, but when he does speak, you sit there and you listen, and it's always has a positive impact on the players around him.
See, I found that interesting because on that documentary that was done, The All or Nothing, I don't think it did him any favours, you know, when it showed some of the footage in the dressing room, that I don't think he came across as the way you're describing the impact. It just looked like he was shouting a lot and it wasn't particularly articulate or coherent. So what were the kind of messages then? I know you're saying he was being positive or he was giving it to the right individuals. What was it that stands out for you?
I think with me, he's always been positive, you know. Even when I wasn't performing well in certain moments, he's always tried to be positive with me personally, but first and foremost, it is a leader in that dressing room for Tottenham. To be honest, I've not seen the documentary, so I can't really speak about that. But with Harry is, again, when he speaks, you listen. Simple as that. And you go back to, he says the right things at the perfect times. Even when I play with him for England, he's so passionate. You know, he's passionate for Tottenham. He wants to win. You know, he is a winner. And he sets high standards. And he wants you to follow those standards. And yeah, I don't doubt him for that.
And I think you can really judge people in times of challenge rather than in times of success. We had, I don't know whether you've listened to this one, but Jordan Henderson came on High Performance and he spoke about when they lost the Europa League final in Jurgen's sort of early years at Liverpool. And he said they were in a nightclub after the game. And obviously everyone's down because they've just lost the final. And Jurgen goes, right, on the dance floor now. I want everyone dancing in 10 minutes. And obviously Jordan is going, why on earth would we want to dance? This is, you know, an awful night. And Jurgen says, no, there's two things. A, you've got to the final of a European competition. Very few footballers get that. You need to celebrate. He said, secondly, this is the start of something amazing. Like, let's celebrate the fact that we're on this journey together. What happened in the aftermath of your Champions League?
The same.
Final defeat. Really?
No, yeah. We I can remember after it, we just, again, obviously everyone's disappointed and down that obviously we lost the Champions League final, but we all just went back to the hotel where we were staying. All the families was there. And yeah, we just, obviously it's a tough moment, of course it is, but you go back to see your family, the players go and see the children, and yeah, they just have, you know, a couple of drinks, food, and obviously the season's ended, and then the families, players just go away on the holidays. But going back to Hendo as well, he's another, you know, proper captain.
Proper leader, yeah. What did Mauricio say? Do you remember in the dressing room afterwards what he said that was pertinent and sticks in the memory?
Not really, to be honest with you, because in that moment, probably, I knew my time was up then anyway.
Really? Why?
No, I knew probably 2 months before that my time was probably coming to an end at Tottenham anyway. So for me, it was just more about those certain moments during the second half of the season. I weren't performing well anyway. I knew that.
Yeah.
I was struggling with my groin when I needed surgery, which I had done when I was in Madrid. But yeah, I don't think he really said much, to be honest, the manager, after the game. It was just, yeah, we, you know, everyone was down, everyone was quiet, of course, and we just got out of the stadium as quickly as possible.
And how did you know that your time at Spurs was coming to an end?
Just obviously football, it's a small world, isn't it? You hear things from people, and you know, people who I know and who I trust, and yeah, this is football, you know.
What you got the message that you're not in Mauricio's plans? Is that?
No, it weren't in his plans, but it was just more maybe my time was coming to an end where they might wanted to sell me, or. But listen, you know, players come and go, managers come and go. This is football, you know. I didn't dwell about it when I heard about certain things. Maybe some of them weren't really true. Maybe they were.
Would you mind sharing what they were?
Yeah, I think I was certain that they was true. But this is football. I still tried to give 110% for my last few weeks. But again, players come and go, managers come and go, and this is football.
See, but that really interests me, because I think that in life in general, in any culture, that like the way that you're inducted or the way you enter a culture is important, but also the way you exit it is important for other people that see it. You know, like have you been handled fairly? Have you been treated with respect and dignity and all those other factors? And you were describing really powerfully the man management of someone like Mauricio and how you had that relationship and they could tell you the truth. And yet I'm surprised that the ambiguity around this exit of hearing rumours rather than somebody coming in and having that kind of honest conversation with you.
Yeah, but I think from obviously the media was speculating a lot at the time and stuff like that, and when I weren't performing well, and I've said that plenty of times, my last few months at Tottenham I wasn't, and obviously hearing things, it didn't help, of course it didn't, but I tried to block it out. But again, it wasn't the right time to speak to anybody, you know, the manager or the club, because was going through such a big moment in the club's history. You know, we had City at the time, and then Ajax, and then obviously the final. So it was just more about, okay, no problem, I'll just come back in pre-season and then just have a chat with the manager and see what things are going.
But it's still like in a world of so many competitive advantages being squeezed out. Like nobody would say to you, say like your nutrition, they wouldn't leave that to chance and hope that you were eating the right food, or if you needed physio, they wouldn't just say, well, they assume that you're going to go to a physio. So I'm surprised that people just assume that you're capable of blocking out that kind of media noise and say, if you need to know the truth, I'll tell you as your manager. I'm surprised that doesn't happen.
I get what you're saying, but in that moment, I don't think for me personally it was the right time to speak to the manager about my future when we had such big games coming up, because I was still getting picked, I was still playing. So all I could do is just give a good account of myself to try and perform well. And then again, just see what happens in pre-season. So that was my thought process, really, if I'm honest with you. That's what I tried to do.
I think actually that's quite a healthy mindset to have in this game. Yeah. Because like one of the skills, I think, to operating in the football world is to realise actually how little control you've got.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. You don't really have much control, really, if I'm honest with you.
You get well paid. The life is great. You play a lot of football. But the truth is,
it's not all about that, though, you know.
Of course it is. I know. Yeah. I can see when someone says that, you see every time the heckles on a footballer's neck come up. It's frustrating, isn't it, that is the stick that every footballer gets beaten with. It's almost like we can treat people how they want. The media can write what they want. The fans can go on social media and say whatever they want because they get well paid. I mean, that's, from the conversations we've had, that's almost the biggest permanent frustration of every player.
I get it, you know, from people on the outside that, you know, players get paid well and they have these houses, cars, or whatever it may be. But behind it, when, you know, they're not going through a good moment in football. Like for me, the last few months at Tottenham was so hard for me. You know, I was getting, you know, stick from the Tottenham fans and stuff like that. You know, this is football. They pay their well-earned money to come and watch, and they expect better. But it's tough. What players have to go through behind the scenes is really hard. You know, social media plays a part. When a player doesn't perform, and then next minute it's all over social media, and you're getting memes about you and stuff like that. And mentally, it's hard. It's really tough because social media is so powerful these days. And, you know, a lot of my friends have had it over the past 2-3 years, and it's, you know, as a friend, it's not nice to see.
So, and I get that in terms of the noise from people that pay the money and think they can say what they want. But what would you advise a manager that might be listening to this, whether it's in sport or not, about how they can sort of turn down the noise and help you? So what would you have needed in those last few months at Spurs that maybe, like, you're having a tough time?
Yeah.
You don't need somebody creating more uncertainty or ambiguity for you. What would you have needed?
Well, it's difficult because at the time I was still getting picked, even though I weren't really performing well. There were certain moments when I was giving the ball away, and I can always remember one at Wembley when I gave the ball away, Marcus scored. So things weren't going my way.
What were you thinking in that moment?
It was tough. It was every little mistake. I scored an own goal against Chelsea. It was a great finish, to be honest. But but no, again,
but it is sometimes in life. It does feel, doesn't it? Like, how many more things can go wrong here?
Week after week, honestly, there were certain moments where, I was even giving the ball away and they were scoring and nothing was going for me. And that was tough. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not one of them players to say to a manager, take me out of the team, because I think that's backing out, really, you know, giving up.
Would it have helped in hindsight?
Maybe, but I think that's where the manager maybe, you know, maybe if he took me out, I wouldn't have had any complaints. But yeah, that's for the manager to decide. But obviously he's still picking me, so I still have to go out there and give my best.
If you're happy to be vulnerable, I know in sport often people don't want to be vulnerable because they think that it's like seen as a weakness. I think we're hopefully getting to the point in 2023 where people will realise it's a strength of a leader to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So there were people that are watching this thinking, it's a meme on Twitter. It's a comment on Twitter. It's something I'm just yelling about you or your family from the stands. Don't take it to heart. Be braver. Maybe not for you because you've been through it and hopefully you've come out the other side. But for other young lads that are starting out in the game, or even for the people that are putting these things on social media.
Yeah.
What does it really do?
No, mentally, especially for young players these days, you know, I play with a lot of young players, and you know, it's so powerful because if they make a mistake in a certain game, let's say a big game, and then they they're getting called all loads of names on the social media, because young players check social media these days. That's normal. I think they probably go looking for stuff, how good they played and stuff. That's normal. But then when they see the negative part of it, mentally that's so bad, and it can affect a young player so much, because maybe they don't feel comfortable coming out speaking to anybody like I didn't many years ago when I was at Barnsley. So it's just having that balance, and again, having the right people around you, because social media is powerful these days, for good and bad.
What was the real world impact on you in that time at Tottenham? Are we talking about not sleeping, tears?
Everything. It's everything really. It's just, when I know I weren't performing well, and when I said before that I speak to my wife about everything, I didn't speak to her, because that was a tough for 3 or 4 months. That I didn't really speak to my wife about it.
Why not?
I don't know. I felt embarrassed really a little bit because I weren't performing. Do you know what I mean? And even she realised the negativity in the stadium that I was getting, which was tough. It was tough to take. But we're professionals. We're here to do our job.
Yeah, but the job shouldn't involve that, though. That's the point, and I think we have to be careful. Football needs to get away from this toxic, aggressive social media stuff. Do you know what I mean?
It does, but I think it's difficult to do, if I'm being honest.
So the last question on this: what would you say to people that send those tweets and think this only a tweet, is harmless, it's just a message? Like, deal with it.
No, I just think about the impact it could have on that individual, really, and you sometimes we don't realise what certain people are going through behind the scenes away from football, People could be going through a lot of stuff at home with their families or whatever, and then they're having this extra negativity at them, and it can mentally, hurt them a lot. So I'll just say that, just try and, be careful what you say in a good way, of course.
But you use that line there, you said, well, you just got to get on with it, you just got to be professional. What does being professional mean now to you? So when you're in that period, you've your definition sounds like it's evolved from going from City to Barnsley. Yeah. What's being a professional now at this moment?
I think for me personally, for all the games that I've played for club and country, the experiences that I've had on and off the pitch, I think now if I ever came through that situation again, I would know how to handle it. If my teammates was going through that situation, I know how to help them to get through that, because I've been through it, and I'd know if, it sounds weird, but even now I'd know if one of my teammates is a bit down, or if they're not playing, or whatever it may be, I'd know how to handle that situation to try and help them.
So what would that be? What would you do?
Have a good chat. I had a good chat with one of my teammates for about an hour in the canteen the other week, and just letting them know that the support's there. Yeah, and there's always light at the end of the tunnel. You'll come through it.
Nice. Did you seek any help, any therapy, any psychologist?
No, not really. No, not really. Just just speaking to my wife all the time, or family members. I didn't really get any help when I was younger.
What's your wife's name?
Charlotte.
Charlotte sounds like a good egg, man.
She is.
She's there when you need her.
She's a good woman.
So this challenging period, did that play into the design, not just to move, but to move abroad?
Not really. I don't think Daniel probably wanted to sell to anyone else in England, if I'm honest.
Again, no control.
No control, yeah.
So when do you get the news that you're not just leaving Tottenham, you're leaving and you're going abroad, make sure your passport's up to date, off you go?
Yeah, it was a strange one, really, because Ancelotti was manager of Napoli and my deal was done there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was done. I had a good conversation with him on the phone. My wife went out with my mum and her mum to have a look at the city and look at schools, and to be fair, my wife didn't really like it. So then that was a no. And then, Atletico Madrid came in out of nowhere. And
so you turned Napoli down because your wife had...
Yeah, and obviously then there was talk of Ancelotti leaving Napoli, and that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to go there as well, to play for him. And that didn't happen. And then, out of nowhere, I got a call from the agent saying, Atletico Madrid want to sign her. So I said, let's get it done. Let's go.
See, when I look back at that period, when we were doing the research for this, the thing I'm intrigued about this period of your life is the idea of cognitive overload. And what I mean is that you've got so many things competing for your attention. You go into a new league where you don't speak the language. You've got a demanding coach. You've got other issues going on at that time in your career.
You've got a wife who needs to move house, children that need to find a school, find a house to live in.
And that's tough as well.
I was breathless when I was reading it, thinking, fucking hell, like, how did you cope with that? To not only go in and get a place in the team, but to end up winning La Liga as well.
Yeah, it's tough, and maybe fans, when you have to move countries, and that's why, just going back a little bit, that's why I have so much respect for the foreign players that come to England, because I'd play one of them thinking, oh, how's he not settled in, and stuff like this. But I realised how tough it is. When I went to Spain, my wife was finding it really hard the first 6 months. And there's so many factors in that. And that's why I have so much respect for all the players who come here and live so many years in the English Premier League. And, hats off to them, because it's hard.
You know what? It's one of the big challenges for me is that the more I have these sorts of conversations, the more I struggle with my other job of being a football presenter, because I'm the guy that has to stand there with ex-players going, he's played 9 games in the Premier League and hasn't scored, having arrived from Argentina or something. Like, what's going on? We talk often on this podcast about empathy over opinion. We live in a world where everyone wants to have an opinion. These days, if you have an opinion as a football pundit or a journalist or whatever, it gets loads of retweets and likes and it boosts your career. But we need to start talking about empathy and understanding people, don't we?
No, definitely. And listen, I was only 2 hours away from England when I lived in Spain, but these boys, from Paraguay, Argentina, Brazil, it's a long way. And some of them, they're here alone. And mentally for them, obviously, if they're not performing in the Premier League, if they've come for a big fee, and then the media, get tough with them, and then social media as well, and that can have a big impact on that certain individual.
There's only one way to solve this, is to have conversations like this.
Yeah, 100%. And if that's why it's important, because you look at, there's so many players over the years in the Premier League who have probably not performed to the levels that they should have, but what happens behind the scenes is really hard. And I can only go off my experience in Spain, where, again, I didn't know the language when I first went there, and I was always thinking about, is my wife okay? Is my children okay? I weren't really 100% on my career, on my football. Yeah. I was always thinking about my wife and kids when I'm travelling. So that was tough.
So tell us, how do you actually deal with that? How do you compartmentalize? I've got to leave my wife and kids now, and I've got to go in, and I've got Diego Simeone and his assistants putting you through what is regarded as commonly some of the most brutal physical sessions. You're trying to integrate with lads where you don't speak the language. How on earth do you cope with that people listening to this could maybe facing their own challenges learn from?
Yeah, so when I first went there, we went to the States for pre-season, then went to Mexico, so I was away for quite a long time. And to be fair, my wife handled it really well, even though it was tough for her in certain moments, in certain situations. She tried to make an effort with other players' wives who maybe spoke a little bit of English, like Morata's wife spoke a bit of English and stuff like that. He was a big help for us and my family. But yeah, it's just about putting yourself in that, in that deep end, and, trying to, for me, I weren't really bothered, because I like testing myself. I like testing, my mental state and stuff like that. And yeah, as soon as I heard about it, I was like, let's go full throttle. Like,
I love that.
Pack our bags, let's go. We're going to Spain.
Did it ever feel lonely though?
Not really, because it was sunshine every day, weren't it? So it weren't too bad having barbecues, so it weren't too bad.
Let's talk about Diego Simeone. So we've gone from Mark Mancini to Mark Robbins.
Yeah.
Mark Robbins to Eddie Howe to Sean Dyche to Mauricio Pochettino. And then Diego Simeone.
Yeah, he's different. He's different, certainly.
In what way?
Everything. I think the way you see him on the touchline is that's just how he is in training. I know I'm not making that up. That's just how he is. Before every game, you'll see him for like 40 minutes just storming up and down the corridor, just looking down at the floor for literally about 40 minutes. I don't know what he's thinking about. It's like he had about 5 Red Bull before a game. He just can't sit still. But as a manager, he's unbelievable, incredible.
Explain how and why.
So basically, if you don't run, you're not going to play for him, regardless of how much it costs, how good you are. If you don't run for him, you don't play. Simple as that. The respect that he has from not just the players that play and that don't play as well. It's like I've never seen anything like it before. The idolising there is incredible to see.
How does that manifest itself?
Just the way man manages all the players, the way just the way he is. He's just so clever. The way he picks picks and chooses when to pull players out to put players in, and when they're not playing, puts an arm around them. The freedom it gives you when you play for the club. Yeah, it was mad.
Do you remember what he said to you? Like, what was your induction from him? The first meeting with him, what got said?
He don't really speak English, to be honest with you. But
so does he have a translator then, or does
yeah,
he?
we had Burgos. He's called. He's right on man. He was brilliant.
He's got that fearsome reputation. Is that right?
Yeah, Burgos and Nelson. Them two are they're lunatics. Them two. But no, it was just basically he's really happy to have me. I can remember meeting him in the mountains when we had pre-season. Just saying he's happy to have me here.
Had you already signed at this stage?
Yeah,
right, so
I
there's
left,
no backing out.
Literally done my press conference and then straight to I thought maybe I can go home, get some things. He said, no, you're straight in the mountains, literally from the stadium straight into pre-season.
And you hadn't met him at this point?
No, I didn't meet him.
Spoke to him?
No, I spoke to him on a text,
right.
But I didn't speak to him in person. I was literally done my press conference to the stadium. Then I thought I could go home, get a few things, go and see my family. No, straight on the campus.
It's another example, isn't it, that 99% of people don't live a life like this, where it's like, now at the drop of a hat you're signing for, or you're going to go and work for another business. You're not going to meet your boss, but you're going to text him, and then you're immediately going to be sent away from your wife and kids. Oh, and by the way, when that's happened, you need to perform really, really well instantly. If you don't, you're in big trouble. And when you do perform, it's in front of 100,000 people, and it's on the telly in front of millions. Like,
it was literally just from the stadium straight to the campus, get my kit on, and then done my first training session.
And what was that like?
It was good. I had there was Morata, who was there, Costa, who spoke a bit of English. So I had a couple of people who spoke English who really helped me settle in, and basically I had that Burgos for the full 6 months, which just stood behind me, just running with me. Basically, when the manager's speaking, he's basically shouting to me in English where he wants me to be, and it was good. It was a good learning curve.
See, I'll give you an example that I don't think I ever learned how to do this. That when I was a kid, I got the opportunity to go and live in Greece for a year, and I went and I didn't speak the language. Everything was alien to me, and I always had that sort of gnawing sense of uncertainty in my stomach. I was thinking, I don't quite fit in here, or I don't quite belong, and I think it stopped me enjoying the experience as much as I could, because I was uncertain. I was dealing with so much ambiguity. How did you deal with that? Because you must have had similar feelings of trying to acclimatise.
To be honest, I was buzzing, to be honest, and I was like, I don't mind putting myself in that position, because I feel like I like testing myself, and most important thing there, especially with Atletico Madrid, you need to make the effort with them, with the players, if they go out for dinners or whatever. Because we lived in an area called La Finca, and all the players live. You can just walk out the back gate and walk to somebody's house, and they're big on that family. They're really huge on that, and yeah, I didn't feel nervous or anything. I was just excited, really, to play for Atletico Madrid, different league. It was a big challenge. People didn't agree with it when I went, and I just thought, why not? I didn't want to come to the end of my career and regret not going.
When you see comments like he shouldn't be going, or he's not going to play, it's not right for him, does that derail you a bit, or does it do the opposite?
No, I think it was more, for me, it was just more everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and to play in Spain, to play for Atletico Madrid,
and to win
play
La Liga.
for Diego Simeone. And at the time, and I didn't think that at the time, but it was just more, just go and enjoy it. I wasn't getting, I was in the media at the time. It wasn't great in England, so I thought, let's just get away, new start with my family, play in Spain and enjoy it. Just enjoy my football again.
And what was the big difference between the two football cultures?
I think, when we played our first Madrid Derby, we had to go outside, and I thought it was banter or something, Koke said we all have to go outside. So we had to finish our dinner, and we had to stand on the balcony, and there was about just less than 10,000 Atletico Madrid fans. But then there was one main guy on the big tannoy, and you had to stand there and just listen to him for a good 10, 15 minutes, and then they'll just start setting fireworks off, singing. You have to clap them, and then go in.
What did that do for you?
Yeah, they were just like different, of course, and it just like that. Basically, the guy was just saying to the new signings, because there's about 4 or 5 of us, me, Joao at the time, Hector Herrera, a couple of other players, what it means to play for Madrid. You need to die for this shirt, you need to do this. And then obviously someone was translating it to me at the time because I didn't have a clue what he was saying. But it was just like, okay, this is different pressure. But yeah, one that I'm ready for.
I read an interview with Simeone again while we're doing the prep, and one of the things that he'd said was about moving to England was something that he hadn't done because he didn't speak the language like he said, and so much of his approach and his success is about emotion and communication and engaging with people.
Yeah, definitely.
So how did he do that with you?
I think it was just more, it's hard to say really. It was just more from body language, it was sort of certain situations in training. If I didn't do something right, which I knew I didn't, he would let me know through his body language, or he would just scream at me in Spanish. So I knew I'd done something wrong. Do you know what I mean? So, but no, there's always a translator there where, when I had a lot of one-to-one meetings with him, because he's just said to me the first thing, what's the one thing you want to improve? I just said my defending. And then literally from then on, it was relentless. Even after training one-to-one, it was good because that's what I wanted to do.
There's some famous research on this about how communication happens. It's often attributed to a guy called Albert Morabian that says that only 7% of our communication is through what we say, but over 83% of over 93% of it is communicated through both what we see, but more importantly, how we make people feel, the emotions. So how would you rate, given that that's what Simeone sort of specialises in, conveying and transferring emotions, how important would you say that is for people listening, that maybe as leaders, the transference of emotion in terms of getting your message across and getting people to buy in?
Yeah, it's so important. And so I'll come back to the one where you said about emotion. With Simeone, I don't think he could ever manage in England just purely because when he was speaking in the dressing room before any game, he was so passionate and the emotion from him was so high. You just like ready to go to war for him. Regardless of you playing, if it's Cadiz or Levante or Barcelona, it's the same. That's his mindset, and that's why I'd get frustrated by managing England, because he couldn't get his message across to the certain individual or the players, because he's that emotional.
Because the culture's different over here? Or?
And that was their culture, because he doesn't speak fluent English.
Right.
So
yeah, right.
The way he speaks and the way he wants to get his message across, he wouldn't be able to deliver it the same as he does in Spanish. So, and as a player, you feel that emotion, you feel that even in training, you know what he wants. And even though I couldn't speak Spanish, it was just more of his body language, what he, in little things, arm signals, and yeah, it was just so good and a great learning curve for me.
So, the reason I'm asking this question is that when we've sat down with Jordan Henderson and Steven Gerrard before that, they told us examples where managers over here have used techniques like showing them photographs or letters from their family.
Oh, right, yeah.
To sort of heighten emotion. And what they've said is it's really quite a tricky balancing act, because you don't want to over-arouse an individual, but you do want to stimulate them enough to want to go and give that extra. So what would you say that sweet spot that he seems to manage is?
I think there was quite a few situations when we was going for the title, to be honest with you, and he would just saying every time in the morning when you wanted to say hello or good morning to somebody, you weren't allowed to say that. You had to say, like, we're champions. It sounds crazy, but that's what it was.
Well, that's how you greet each other.
Yeah, we're going to be champions.
I love that.
Every home game, away game, there was scarves, and there must have been thousands of them going back years. All pictures and videos of us backing our youth team and scoring goals or creating assists or photos, and yeah, that's when you knew in that moment it was real, and there was one moment when we played Valladolid away, last game of the season to win the league, and he texted me at he did this on a lot of times where he just texts you at random times. So he texted me 11 o'clock at night, 11:30, saying basically come downstairs. So I went downstairs, and then he showed me an interview that I did when I first signed him, a press conference, and it was just what do I want to achieve coming for Atletico Madrid? And I just said, to work with a manager, and I want to win the Liga. And he's shown it me, turned it off, and then he just walked out. And do you know what I mean? Those little moments when you think about
Gives
it.
you goosebumps actually when you hear that.
And
you
it was
can
just
feel
like, and I went back to my room thinking, like, he didn't even say anything to me, just show me the video of what I said because I wanted to win the Liga. And the next day we did. And he just literally walked out and went back to his room or wherever he went. And little moments like that was good.
I love that because he's not saying anything, is he?
No, he just walked out. He literally just shown it me and just went. And
sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how did that feel, that moment?
It felt good. It felt really good. And he would, you see, for my duration when I was there, he did moments like that where he'd text me and we had to get on a Zoom call or whatever, you know, and because his wife Carla spoke English and we had to get on the Zoom and he'd talk to me about a game or how I could improve. And he only lives 3 doors down from me. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
I'm interested then because Sean Dyche told us that one of like his most treasured memories was when you're out on the field after you've beaten Valladolid and you're celebrating, you phone him up to say thank you.
Yeah.
How much of that would you have done anyway, or how much of it was inspired by that kind of emotional leadership that you've been experiencing?
Yeah, because Dyche is of course Eddie Howe back in when I was at Burnley, Mark Robbins and all the other coaches have done a lot for me, but the moment where I was playing regular football and where I needed the help and guidance, he was there. And he helped me so much and was actually speaking to each other the night before. And I just gave him a quick FaceTime and I just said, thank you for everything that you've done. And it was just a real good moment for us both, really. I still always speak to him till this day.
It's nice. And I think what is nice about that is that maybe Diego also played an important role in that because he's reminding you throughout your time at that football club. Like,
100%.
This isn't about being here. This is the journey you've been on.
And that's why it was good. He was showing us videos from when I was at Tottenham, Burnley.
So it's in your
Barnsley.
head then, isn't it? It's like...
It was brilliant, honestly. And there was loads of situations where just fine moments, even when it was 1-0 down, because Valladolid needed to win to stay up. We couldn't draw because Real Madrid would have won on head-to-head, so we had to win. And just certain moments when we had our drinks breaks in the way he was speaking and basically, obviously when you watch it, if not you've seen the documentary, but it shows you what he was saying. And don't worry, we'll win. And he always talks about the Luis Suarez moment from when he first signed, saying he'll win us the title with last kick of the game. And he did.
Instilling that self-belief.
Love that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Let's talk briefly then about the thrill of achievement, right? So Johnny Wilkinson came on his podcast and said he tried for 20 years to be the world's best rugby player. He achieved it in 2003. How long do you think the thrill lasted for him?
I can't tell you.
30 seconds.
Wow.
And then he was ready to go like, right, what's next?
Yeah.
You win La Liga. You spent your whole career wanting a trophy like that.
To go with my youth cup one.
How did it feel?
Yeah, just an unbelievable feeling. I just really, when I got home, when I went for dinner with my wife the next day, just reflecting on where I came from, how I've done it, what people have sacrificed to get me in this position that I'm in today, and just people doubted me, and I didn't go there to prove anybody wrong. It was just, I have no regrets in every decision that I make, and I always believe in myself.
So is it time to talk about Newcastle, do you think?
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to start with, we've discussed this, so this is perfect.
Okay.
Apologies about the glasses. This is what happens when you get old, mate. You're not there yet. I'm going to read 3 tweets.
Okay.
Why would Trippier leave Atletico Madrid and go to Newcastle just to play in the Championship? World Cup year and Kieran leaves Madrid Champions League for Newcastle, who will get relegated. Good luck in the Championship. When we sit here now, knowing that next season is looking at Champions League, not Championship, how do you feel when you hear those?
I don't feel like I don't know how to explain it. Like, I just feel I came here to set out what I wanted to do. And when people say those, it's not to prove anybody wrong. It's just, I have belief. And I would go back to before when I said that I have no regrets in every decision that I make. This was the perfect decision for me. And there was loads of comments when I first signed there, as you could imagine, different, he came here for money or whatever it may be. But what people don't actually realize is I came here on less money than when I was at Madrid.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
So you took a pay cut to come to Newcastle?
I come here on less money than what I was on at Madrid. I could have signed a new 3-year contract at Madrid, but I didn't. There was reasons why I had to come back, family, and that's the truth. So, yeah, there were certain people saying it wasn't. But
so the obvious question is then, why? Why would you take a pay cut to?
Because I had to come back to England for my family, my children. Was going through a difficult moment with other stuff that was going on in personal life as well, which could have sort of affected with the club, etc. But I've got my reasons why I came back. And when I come back to England, I can't just say I'm going to sign for Man City. You have to have a club that wants you, do you know what I mean? And there weren't many in the Premier League, and I wanted to come back up north. And to be truthful, there was Newcastle, and I had good chats with the manager. And I just thought, you know what, why not? I knew there was 19th in the league. I have no regrets, even though I could have been playing in the Championship. I didn't have no relegation clause. I took less money. I took a gamble. But again, I have no regrets. That's it.
Let's talk about when you first arrived then.
Okay.
You came in January.
Yeah.
And it was like, let's be totally frank, it was touch and go whether this club was going to get relegated at that point.
Of course, yeah.
Then there was this incredible, felt like this shift, didn't it? And we spoke with Eddie about it on this podcast, and he just talked about this incredible belief that washed over the city. Can you give us your sort of emotional recollection of that period when this club was saved as a Premier League football club?
Yeah, certainly went my first game against Cambridge when we got knocked out. So that was
what were you thinking then?
Yeah, that was tough. That was
and what had been the game before that you played in for Atletico?
Oh, we beat can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Betis at home.
So you've won a game in the Liga, then you've been knocked out the FA Cup by Cambridge.
Yeah.
And you're thinking what?
No, I didn't have no regrets. It was just more I had good chats with the manager about trying to help the players around me in a difficult moment. And when we got beat by Cambridge, it was just I'd more be going in the dressing room just saying, forget about it, you know. We got a massive against Watford who we played after. We just need to focus on the league. But the moment when it's unfortunate I got injured as well, I was devastated because I was trying to help a club stay in the league, not just me but the team. But the moment that I realised that we were probably going to be safe was, I don't know which game. I think maybe the Southampton away, maybe. But to be honest, we went on a crazy run, and that belief came from the manager and the players that were signed in January, the right characters, which is the most important thing in a team. You need to have the right characters in the squad.
So tell us more about that. Go on.
Yeah, so for me, I'm a big believer in that. You need to have the right characters who are on the same page to pull in one direction. And the manager's been a big believer in that, the way he wants the club to be run, the way he wants to set his teams up, and you need to have a good dressing room. And
break that down for us, Kieran. What is the right character? What does that mean?
How are people going to handle themselves when they're not in the squad, when they're not playing? For example, you look at Wilson, Alex now, two on fire strikers. There's no bitterness, there's no complaining. They're both just ready. And if you have that in your team, that will take you so far. So far.
And what about Eddie? Let's go right from when you first spoke to him.
Yeah.
What did he say to you to sell this football club?
Do you know what? He didn't have to say anything to him. I'm not just saying that. He didn't say anything to me to sell it to me. It was just more... when he came out to me, he actually came out to Madrid to watch us train. Probably October time, I think, before he even found out he was going to get this job. And I was having a few words with him, trying to plant the seed. If you ever get a job in England again, I'll come back. And he took over Newcastle. But yeah, the changes from now until when I first had him 12 years ago is incredible. Incredible change. Just in the sense of back then we would score 4 but would concede 2-3 goals, and I think it was early years of his management when he was at Burnley, and then he went back to Bournemouth, and then I think for me, looking at the manager is when he took the time out. I think when he had to reflect and go and look at how other teams work, how they operate, and you look at him now, he's flying as a manager, flying.
And what about his man management? How's that different?
Yeah, I think his man management is top, because I think back then the dressing room that we had in Burnley then was tough. I think we're proper old school players, and tough for the manager at the time. I think he'll admit that. But looking at him now, he's got players that he trusts. He has good leaders in the dressing room who can handle any situation. if it doesn't need to go to him, we can take that indoors, we can deal with it. And it's just about the trust and the connection that we have.
Who are the leaders then in the current Newcastle dressing room?
So we have a leadership group meeting. There's me, Dan Burn, Callum Wilson, obviously Jamal Lascelles, and Matt Ritchie. So we normally have a meeting to see if everything's okay, if everything's, if there's any problems.
And how did you guys come together? Were you appointed, or were you self-selected?
I was appointed when I first signed. The Federico Fernandez was in at the time, and obviously he's left now. But yeah, he's got appointed. Dan Burn got promoted in pre-season, so he's happy about
Dan.
And is that a vote? Is that by the squad voting?
I think because he's experienced. He's been around a long time, and he's a well-respected part of the group.
Sure, but how do you get to become a member of the leadership group? Is it the squad, or is it the manager appointing you?
To be honest, I don't know, to be honest with you. I think obviously Feddy left, and then Bernie come in. I think he's one of the experienced ones in the group, one of the oldest with me as well. So he's on board now. Because
when we sat down with Phil Neville, he spoke about the experience when he left Manchester United and he went into Everton, and David Moyes had almost appointed him as the leader and said, I need you to set the standards here. And he described it as quite tough and quite lonely, that he says he was the guy going into the gym doing extras on his own first of all, and eventually there was other players that gravitated towards it and started to join him, and then eventually it started to become a bit more of a movement. How do you come into a leadership group having not been part of that team and sort of set standards or make demands of the group without being sort of dismissed as busy or being like the teacher's pet?
I think it's just the way you conduct yourself on the training pitch. I think you try to set high standards in training to try and impress, I think it comes from respect as well. I think, when you see players going like Bruno, and he automatically raises the levels of training, and then people around him, they up the levels. And you see that from even before the takeover. You look at Sean Longstaff, you look at Murphy, Joe Linton, Miggy, you see their performances. They've been incredible. And obviously that comes from the coaching from the manager, but they deserve their huge credit as well because, they've really transformed as players.
This leadership group, would you just sort of explain the purpose of it and maybe an example of where you've had an impact?
Yeah. I think it's good for if there's any problems in the dressing room, or instead of the manager getting involved, we can handle it in-house. If the lads need anything, Christmas dues or anything like that, we'll sort it out. But no, if there's anything that the players need, or if it's change of days off or whatever it may be, then we would present that to the manager, and then
And it's quite nice, I think, having a group rather than an individual, because I think sometimes it's difficult for one person, as Damien was just describing, to kind of that tall poppy syndrome. You're the guy that's always doing those extra bits. Whereas if there's a group of you, I think it provides a bit of sort of psychological safety, doesn't it? To get the
definitely.
work done.
We've all had different experiences, all those players, and that's always an advantage as well. And it's always good for the manager as well, where if the manager doesn't need to get involved in anything that happens that he doesn't know about, because we can deal with that as the leadership group. And I think it's a good balance between the players and the manager.
So if we take some of the incidents that you described, like with Pochettino was really hot on timekeeping, you've got to be early, or Sean Dyche is hot on like leaving your ego at the gates, not being disrespectful. What are the kind of standards then that you insist on for a good dressing room, that you say these are non-negotiable, we need to have these kind of behaviours firmly understood?
I think it's, the things that you just mentioned, being on time, for if it's pre-acts or if it's in the mornings for training. There's just the way, you train ultimately, there's no excuses not to train, to give your best in training. Obviously, players have off days or going through certain things or what, but I think it's just the demands of everyone, and I think that's what we've got here. We demand a lot in training, not just myself, all the players, and I think that's grown throughout this season. And positivity as well is key. You need to have a positive group, no negativity, or cause it can be like a domino effect. Then if somebody says something, or they're not happy if they're not playing, or they want to leave, and then it's like a domino effect. And
So how do you deal with it when somebody is bringing that kind of negative energy to the group?
Yeah, it's maybe, me and Jam speak a lot. Because obviously he's club captain and we speak a lot. And, maybe he would say, oh, do you want to go and speak to him, after training, or just have a word with him in a positive way? Because if you go in all guns blazing, it's not going to help anyone. But just to help him. In certain moments, that's what's needed to be done sometimes with me and Jam, with players, not in a bad way, just to see if they're okay, most importantly as well.
Sorry, I was going to jump in on. So, the idea that Eddie told us when we sat down about it, like when you win a game, you'll pose for that photo when that gets put up then around the training ground.
Yeah.
Like, did you guys come up with that as a leadership group, or was that the manager? And what's your view on that kind of?
Yeah. So, I think it was I can't remember when it started, to be honest with you, but I think it's not rubbing it in people's faces or anything like that. We just look at it as motivation, really, because we walk down the hall to the dining room or whatever, and we see that winning feeling, and we want that winning mentality. So, yeah, my feeling on it is proud moments of things that we've had to overcome throughout when we signed in January till now, and the progress that we've taken. So I don't want people from the outside to think it's being disrespectful if we are, celebrating for like 5 seconds. It's just memories. And I think it's important to know the memories that we've had when we've been winning, because when you're losing, it's quick to forget. You need to, have that winning mindset.
And look, the whole of football is looking at this club now thinking, how can you be in a relegation scrap last season and in the top four this season? How much has getting through that relegation period with a lot of the same players that are still involved now?
Yeah, it's massive. It's massive, and it's gone a lot faster than what I thought. Of course it has. But again, I think the players deserve huge credit, and the players that have come in, the way they've adapted to the manager's methods, because he demands a lot in training on and off the pitch. So everyone deserves huge credit. It's certainly the players that was there before the takeover, because I think that doesn't get spoken about enough. The players that was there, they've done incredible, and obviously that comes from coaching as well. But yeah, it's crazy. I didn't think we would be pushing this high up in the table so soon.
And look, you've played at all different levels in more than one country. This isn't a question about talent. This is a question about mentality and self-belief and spirit. Where does the current Newcastle dressing room sit in that respect compared to all the other dressing rooms you've been in?
Yeah, definitely up there, certainly, because what they've had to overcome before the takeover, when there was rock bottom, I think, or 19th on about 7 points, and then going on, staying up, and then kicking on again to be third in the league, to overcome the hurdles that we have overcome. The people from the outside, they wouldn't be able to keep up the pace, still fall off, etc., etc. And mentally, the way they've overcome all those hurdles is brilliant, and testament to them as well.
So if you had to apportion numbers on this, I'm interested in your experience, because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about something that stands out in all your experiences has been great team spirits. When success is achieved, that idea of a great team spirit seems to be significant. If you had to give me a figure for how significant you think it is as a competitive advantage compared to talent, what sort of number would you offer?
I think it's bigger than talent. I think having that team who are all on the same page, who want to pull in the right direction, who might not be as talented as your opposition, I'll take that all day over talent, 100%, because it's so powerful. You look at us this season, we've gone toe-to-toe with Man City at home, which is a thrilling game. We've gone toe-to-toe with everyone in the league, and, I'll take that all day. The togetherness, 100%.
Can we talk about the football club as a whole?
Yeah.
It humbles a player, doesn't it? The size, the scale, and the passion up here for football.
It does, and when people have said that to me in the past, or when I've played there against Newcastle, I don't think you realise how big the club is when you play for them. The support all around the city. When people say it's a football city, it certainly is. Yeah, even when I'm taking my kids to school, or yeah, you know, they say to you, oh, what a good result the other day, and next week you're speaking to them for half an hour, you know, and that's how passionate they are, and it's good. And, you know, they remind you of the old times as well when they weren't going through a good moment, so they're all just proud.
Do you remember the moment when you signed, when you really realised the power of the fans here? Because I think there's very few football clubs in the UK, you can probably name 3 or 4, maybe 5, where the fans understand their responsibility, where they realise that they're standing on the terrace representing the previous generations, and they're going to hand it down to the next generation, and they have a genuine part to play. When did you realise the power of the fans here and get that real sense of what they do for this club?
Well, on my first game against Cambridge, it was a sellout, and like, no disrespect to Cambridge, but you don't see that in the Premier League. A Premier League side selling out the stadiums on a Wednesday night or whenever it was. But the fans have been incredible since I've been there. You know, you see the big banners, they have the war flags, and the atmospheres in there it's incredible. And I can always go back to the one against Arsenal at home last year when it was up there, the best atmosphere I've been involved in, for sure.
And you know what? I actually liken the Newcastle fans to your career. Like, you have to bear with me on this. Like, dealing with setbacks, dealing with people doubting you, dealing with criticism, dealing at times with ridicule, having to be challenged, and then finally getting the reward you deserve. You know, it's a long time since these fans have lifted a trophy. Yeah. For a long time, there was an owner of this football club who didn't have their best interests at heart and almost seemed from the outside like he didn't realise the value of the fans here. And actually, at the same time that you've arrived here, they're finally getting the rewards for all the years that they carried on spending their money, carried on supporting, carried on cheering, carried on having their hearts broken. And I don't think we can underestimate, actually, that they are genuinely adding to the success that this football club is experiencing at the moment.
No, definitely. And they've had to go through tough times, of course they have. But now it's a new journey. Now they can dare to dream, you know. There's a first cup final in so long. Obviously, we gutted we didn't win, but that's just the start, you know. That's just a stepping stone of where this club wants to go, where it deserves to be. And the fans are so valuable, you know. Throughout the season, when we've been going through a tough moment where we've needed them, they've always been there. They've always reacted to the situation. We go 1-0 down or we're on top, and we certainly value them so highly, and long may that continue, of course. And four cup finals left.
Listen, you'll be fine. Have you allowed yourself to think about Champions League football? You must have started to dream. I'd be silly here to say I've not. I don't want to lie to you. But we shouldn't be scared to say we want to play Champions League football. I know the managers or people have been we'll take it a game at a time. I understand that, but you know, players like myself want to play Champions League football again. I've had the taste of it for a good number of years, and if we brought that back here, I dare to think what it would be like, this city, this club in the Champions League. Do you think that the current squad could deliver on that stage?
Yeah, I think we could. I think, like I said before, I'm a big believer in as a group. If we're on the same page and we're pulling in the same direction, that'll take you so far, and it's so powerful. So, listen, I think it'll be a great occasion for the lads to be playing Champions League football. But, you know, we've got another big game on Sunday against Arsenal. And let's see what happens.
Attitude over ability, right?
Definitely.
And just before we move on to the quick fire and whatever you want to do, the poster out or the banner out there, we're not here to be popular.
Yeah, it's massive.
We're here to compete. What does that say to you?
That just says everything about the club's supporters, you know. I just think they've woke a sleeping giant, if I'm honest with you now. I think you look at Villa, you look at Brighton, who are pushing. Of course, like, other teams might have not have done as well this season, but you got to give credit to, I think, us, Villa, Brighton, and it's so competitive, this league. There's no easy game in this league. You got to respect your opposition, and you're seeing teams now push for the top 4, top 5 now.
Can I ask you about your international experience? Because you've been part of the most successful England team in generations, and you've spoken really powerfully around team spirit and the club cultures that you've been a part of. What is it that you've seen Gareth Southgate do during your time that you think has forged that same kind of spirit that's led to the success of the last 3 tournaments.
Yeah, again, Gareth, another manager who's a big believer in the togetherness. And I think when I first arrived, it weren't clicky or anything, far from that, but it was like people weren't eating together, but then straight away from after that, we had a lot of meetings, what it means to represent, to play for England. It's always an honour, and we had meeting after meeting about it. But looking back now, it was powerful what Gareth was doing with the staff. And you look at the team now, even from 2018, we had a great squad. Then we went to Russia in the World Cup. Was all on the same page. We all wanted to obviously win the tournament. We got pretty far, but yeah, Gareth and Steve have done an unbelievable job there. What they've done to create that good environment to play for England, and players want to go and play for England. And yeah.
And what would you say has been the most powerful intervention that they've made that has broken down these cliques and got people on the same page again?
I think first and foremost is a great person, great man manager as well. And every time we go to a camp or go on a tournament when you're away for 5-6 weeks, they've always created that great environment where they leave little touches, like it's like you're at home. You got family pictures of your families, and they just create that homely feel. And he's done wonders there, Gareth. He's a great manager, Gareth.
Nice. Time for the quick-fire questions.
Okay.
What are the 3 non-negotiable behaviours that you and the people around you need to buy into?
Don't be late. Always give 100% in training. And commitment.
Nice.
What's your biggest weakness and your greatest strength?
In football? In life? Greatest weakness? I don't know. That's a tough one. You put me on the spot here. Greatest weakness. I think my strength is communication. As like a leader, people around me. Weakness, I would say, have a bit more belief. I think as my weakness, believe more.
What is the thing that people get wrong or misunderstand most about you, do you think?
Honesty, I think. I think I'm a very honest person and an honest player, and I'm committed.
Nice.
What advice would you give to a teenage Kieran just starting out?
Always give 100%, and always give 100%. Listen, and never listen to anybody who says you can't make it or you can't do anything. Always have that self-belief.
Nice. And your final message for the listeners to this, who come to these podcasts because they want the kind of lessons and the learnings that you've had from your life, what would you like to leave them with? Your one golden rule, really, for living a high-performance life.
I would always say, have that belief, have that commitment. If you're ever going through a bad moment, always, speak up. Don't be scared. And the most important thing, just give absolutely everything. Give 110% in every situation that you're in, and have no regrets.
Lovely. Listen, mate, thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
Fascinating. And I think the most interesting thing for people listening to this is a reminder that from the outside, football looks like one thing, but as you've just described in very vulnerable, brilliant detail, often it can be something very different. So let's never underestimate the mental strength of the people that do the job that you do. And thanks for talking about it, because I think it's powerful, No,
thank you for having me on. It's been really good. Thank you.
Hey guys, it's Jake here. Listen, before you go, please do me just one favour. Hit subscribe. It makes such a difference to us. The more subscribers we get, then the bigger the channel becomes. The bigger the channel becomes, the bigger the names we can attract and the more impact we can have for you. So thanks for watching, and please subscribe right now.